Hello and welcome to another edition of the Knicks Film School pregame show. My name is Andrew Claudio, aka GMAC, and it's time to preview the Knicks' upcoming matchup on Saturday against the Los Angeles Clippers, a team that has won 6 games in a row. Has really started to figure it out since the addition of James Harden. Joining me to talk about this matchup and preview this game will be Chuck Mockler of one of my favorite niche podcasts, Clips and Dip. We go through all of the different things going on with the Clippers, whether it be the fact that Kawhi Leonard is playing like an all-NBA first-team candidate, maybe even an MVP candidate, the stakes that this season holds, and whether a nuclear button could get hit, and, you know, the fact that the Clippers are trying to win a championship. And we go through the Mount Rushmore of rivals and all the different things that you normally come to expect. I think you're going to enjoy the conversation. But this preview, or I should say, this intro to the preview is a little different. So normally I do 2 different intros for this podcast. There's one that is recorded with the guest that is part of the video experience, where it's a layout and who the guest is and give them a full runway and an intro and all that. And then in the audio audience gets a different intro that's much longer, and I give a little monologue at the beginning. And I decide to throw some connections and the Knicks against the opponent's history and maybe one game that stands out. And I try to throw some stats at you. But this is going to be a multi-purposed intro that the video audience also gets to see, because I have a bit of a disclaimer for the video audience as well as our audio listeners. So behind the scenes, we recorded this interview, this conversation, Chuck and I, on Friday around 4 p.m. Eastern. And I'm just going to be completely transparent with our audience, with all of you, I consider you my family here at Knicks Film School. I was so down in the dumps after that Jazz game. I was so deflated watching RJ go 0 for 7 from 3 and Jalen Brunson go 0 for 6. And, you know, the Tibbs rotation conversations have already started with Emmanuel Quickley's minutes and all of the different things that lead to very frustrating basketball that we get to watch. And I was getting flashbacks to 2 years ago where it was all going to culminate in a frustrating game against the Lakers. And I was so down in the dumps about this basketball team and the state of the team. And it's reflected in the conversation that you're going to hear, I guess, watch even with Chuck, because I referenced several times how annoyed I was and how down I was and how not confident I was about this game against the Clippers. In fact, I even said it one time, like, we're coming off this game against the Suns. The reason this isn't 2 years ago and the reason things are different now, for those watching on YouTube, is because there's a guy over my right shoulder, at least a silhouette over my right shoulder of him. And that him is known as Jalen Brunson. And of course, you're listening and watching this after Jalen Brunson made history last night, becoming the first player in NBA history to score 50 points in the same game. They went 9 for 9 from 3. In fact, the list of players to score 50 points in a game and go 100% from 3 is 16 names long, and he's the only one to make at least 8 or 9 threes without missing. Kyrie Irving's the only other one to make at least 7 without missing. One of the best individual regular season performances that I've ever seen. In fact, as the resident Carmelo Anthony stan here at Knicks Film School, I'm trying to think if this is the best regular season performance that I've ever seen. You know, the Melo 62-point game will always stand out, but that was against the Bobcats, a team that doesn't even exist anymore. The Melo game against the Heat, where he had 50 points with all jump shots, not a single point in the key, always stands out to me. But like LeBron, Wade, and Bosh didn't play that night. Like the game on Easter Sunday where he hit the 2 threes, the one to send it into overtime and the one to win. You know, we've had some great scorers over the years, and that specific performance from Melo, that stands out. And there's all these ones that I go back to. The Allen Houston game against the Lakers where he had 53 on the road. The Jamal Crawford 52-point game. Like, I'll even say Julius Randle's 57 points last year. That third quarter when he was unconscious was amazing. And these are individual performances that all stand out. But the Randall performance happened in a loss. The Houston performance happened in a lost season. Jamal Crawford, that team didn't make the playoffs. And what Jalen Brunson did in Phoenix on Sean Marion night, on the second time that the Phoenix Suns were able to unveil their big three. Now, granted, Bradley Beal got hurt, but that was with Kevin Durant and Devin Booker in the building. And the Knicks were that game was slipping away. They were trending toward a double-digit loss, and we were going to be looking at 2 in a row with the Clippers and the Lakers coming up. And he went 12 of 12 in the second half with 35 points, 8 of 8 for 3 in the second half. And the best part, my favorite part about the performance, and this has been mentioned already, 9 assists. And there's even a point, like he could have had more points. He had a breakaway layup, but saw that Julius Randle was running with him and he handed it off for 2. So this could have been a 52-point performance. But Jalen Brunson instead is not just the best player on this team. He's not only the best player in the game yesterday, Kenny Smith, but he's one of the best things that's happened to this franchise in a long time. And we'll see what happens with this team going forward. We'll see how important this win actually becomes. Like, they got to take care of business and turn this momentum into something. But I'm fully amazed that we get to watch this guy play basketball, and thankful that he gets to turn our moods upside down, and even more grateful that he gets to make the podcast you're about to watch and the mood and the vibes that I am putting out there look even sillier. Because how dare I doubt this basketball team that's led by the great Jalen Brunson. So all that being said, we're going to take a quick break for all the audio listeners. The video audio listeners, we're just going to go right to the conversation. But take that in mind, that I had very different vibes when I was recording this episode before the Suns game. So tune in for that. Thank you for tuning in as always, everybody. Here is my conversation with Chuck Mockler of Clips and Dip, previewing the Knicks matchup against the Los Angeles Clippers. Enjoy. Joining me now here on the Knicks Film School pregame show, with the Knicks playing a back-to-back against 2 Western Conference contenders. The schedule only gets easier. Don't worry, everybody. We play the Lakers on Monday. But continuing on this Western Conference road trip, it's time to head over to my good friends over at Clips and Dip, one of my favorite NBA niche podcasts to reference and to talk about. And joining me from the Clips and Dip podcast, it is Chuck Mockler. Chuck, welcome back to the Knicks Film School podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. Excited to talk this interesting matchup between the Clippers and Knicks. Clippers in the midst, obviously, of a pretty nice run right now. So hope it continues. No disrespect, but
I understand. It's absolutely disrespectful, but I understand. Of course, I root for your team to win, except when you play my team. That's exactly how things usually go, and your team has been winning a lot recently, 6 in a row as we currently record. And it's funny, last year for the Knicks, they got off to a 10-13 start, and then they made a lineup change. They went to a 9-man rotation on December 4th last year. And it's this pivot point that a lot of Knicks fans point to as, like, as soon as they changed that, everything was different. They were like a top 5 team in net rating and offense. They were like top 2 or 3. There's also the trade deadline date that we point to, because that's when they got Josh Hart and became an even better team. But the December 4th change, they were 37-22 the rest of the year. And I say that because the Clippers made a trade for James Harden and then lost 5 in a row. And then a lineup change happened. And if you look at their team since that lineup change on 11-17, they are the best record in the East, in the Western Conference. They're 11-3. In fact, you could argue they've had the best record in the NBA. Depends what you say a 10-2 is against an 11-3. Sure. But they're top 5 in defense at number 4. They're top 5 in net rating at number 5. And it seems like that lineup change, and for Knicks fans who don't know what I'm talking about, they took Russell Westbrook out of the starting lineup and went to a big 3 with Russ coming off the bench. Am I reading that correctly? That Clippers fans look at that November 17th date that changed everything?
That you pretty much nailed it. That switching up that lineup, things with Ty Lue, sometimes with veterans on the team and lineup, things take a little longer than some Clippers fans want it to. But as you know, it's very hard to manage egos. And when you have egos, I think also has kind of a bad connotation to it. But when you have 4 guys like the Clippers have at their level, there's clout, there's certain feelings about things and wanting to try things. So you have to let these things kind of fail. And then you make the change. And then Ty Lue gets to kind of maybe say, see, like this is what we should have been doing right here, is splitting up James Harden and Russell Westbrook. And aside from that change, that's coincided with Kawhi Leonard playing some of his best basketball as a Clipper. But health aside, which is the healthiest he's been as a Clipper, he's just frightening on both ends right now for other teams. And James Harden stepping into a bigger role, like you said, since he's been starting. So it's all coalescing for the Clippers. And you're right, it all started with that pretty monumental lineup change.
So from what you can tell, have things been copacetic amongst the team? We'll talk about the fan base reaction. Sure. But the last time the Knicks played the Clippers, the Harden trade had just happened. Yeah. And Adam was saying like that there's a lot of egos to manage, but he talked glowingly about Russ. Now he had finally found a home. And now Russ is back in a bench role where he's not getting as much usage and not getting as many minutes. Is winning, healing all of that over, and there's no issues. So basically, how are the vibes from what you could tell amongst the Clippers locker room?
I mean, they're great. Winning solves a lot of problems. Okay. There was footage. I don't know if you saw this, but it was during the Clippers skid, and there was footage of Kawhi like being frustrated in defensive possession and like kicking a chair or something like that. And there was like the whole Zapruder approach to it and being like, look how upset he is, and look at this body language. And it's like, well, that's what you want to see from the best guy on your team when you're playing horribly. You want to see some of that emotion, especially from Kawhi. And now that we're winning, we're seeing the opposite of that. We're seeing Kawhi be happy. We're seeing him smile and things like that. The vibes, I would say, are good for 98% of the guys in the locker room. PJ Tucker's upset with his role, but I don't know. He's not playing at all, and the Clippers are playing very good basketball. So it's not that simple, but everything is feeling good right now for the Clippers. Ty Lue's been making good decisions, which obviously helps all that too. But so many guys are playing really good basketball right now.
So an episode that I actually caught of Clips and Dip was your guys' reaction to the Denver game when you had a chance to get back to 500. And then the Nuggets came in, no Jamal Murray, no Nikola Jokic. And between Reggie Jackson having the game of his life and DeAndre Jordan turning back the clock, it felt like a moment of frustration that, I don't know. What I was reading in from that episode was like, my goodness, like, did we make this trade and it's not going to work out? And lo and behold, it might have been the actual low point. Like, you actually hit rock bottom and things turned around since then. Now, you just referenced what Kawhi's done since around that point. In those 8 games since that rock bottom moment against Denver, he's averaging 28 a game on 61% shooting from the field, 56% from 3, and 88% from the line. I mean, what the hell is my question? Like, now I guess my better question to what Kawhi's doing is, and I don't mean to be the Debbie Downer, but like we've seen Kawhi
no. Yeah.
Is there an availability question? Like how long he can sustain it? Or is it just like, you know what? We have multiple guys in house. We know that he can at least reach this level again, which gives us confidence come playoff time.
I don't think that's a crazy question to have at all. This is an unprecedented amount of games he and Paul George have played together, which it ended the other night because of just a little groin thing for PG. But Kawhi wants to play. And Ty Lue said when our guys are healthy, they're going to play this year. A lot of Clippers fans maybe didn't believe it at first. Rightfully so. We've seen there's been some interesting messaging with these guys' availability. Right now, I think I'm just enjoying it so much because he's been on such a great level and it's been 6 games and there hasn't been, he's just kind of keeps going up and to the right. A lot of people were concerned about him for some reason, because the Clippers weren't winning and things like that. But Kawhi's one of the few guys who I trust to actually flip a switch or to slowly flip that switch because we've seen him do it at such a consistent level. So he's 100% healthy. They need to do this as long as they can. When I start to get worried is when I look ahead at the schedule towards the end of the season. Clips and Dips fans will know I reference this all the time. They play 17 games in March, which is I don't know, a shit ton of games.
Oh, it is. Yeah. No, usually it's like 13, season. 14 is a lot. And you got 17 in March. Wow.
So that's going to be interesting. I think the rotation is going to have to be a little bit bigger at certain points in the season. But for right now, there's a question, but it's not, I guess it's looming. It's not imminent, if that makes sense.
Yeah. The fact that you went and made this trade for James Harden should also make it that if someone takes a night off, it's like, well, we still have a superstar or two that
last night with the Clippers.
On the court. Exactly. Who they play last night again? They played the Warriors.
They played the Warriors, and Harden was fantastic.
That's a franchise that is
going on up
going
north.
A direction. Yeah, exactly. Actually, let me ask you about the Western Conference and just the layout. Obviously, the Timberwolves being great is not something a lot of people predicted, but I almost feel like they've taken the Warriors' place in the contender rankings, that there's still the same amount of contenders, and it's really the same teams that I see. It's just swap out the Timberwolves for the Warriors, or the Warriors for the Timberwolves. It's still Denver. It's still you guys. It's still the Lakers. It's still Phoenix. Who scares you the most out of the Western Conference at the moment?
I'm not super scared of Phoenix, to be honest. It seems like I think the Clippers are better than the Suns. Okay. The Nuggets, very difficult to not be terrified of them. The Clippers beat them for the first time since like January of 2022 or something this year, with an actual healthy Nuggets team. So that was surprising. Timberwolves, I want to say their half court defense is insane right now. Their defensive side of the ball, Rudy Gobert is playing some of his best basketball. So that freaks me out a little bit, just because you got two teams with two really good big guys. Obviously, one of them the best player in the league, and the other maybe the best defensive player in the league. So that top two right now is really difficult. I think it's probably still the Nuggets is the number one.
That makes sense. The Timberwolves are, I don't know. I've been trying to find a comp like this where
it's hard, man. It's kind of weird.
It's like they're ahead of schedule, but they have enough veterans that it could be conceivable that this team comes out the West. Yes. You know, like not to the point where, I mean, Edwards getting to the finals in this early would probably be unprecedented, but man, you mentioned it. Their half court defense, it's just impossible to try and score on them because you have levels to it with McDaniels, and Edwards kind of holds his own. And then you just they've been bringing Gobert further and further away from the rim in their coverage too. Yeah. So where he's not just he's
playing safety basically.
Right. But he's coming to the nail to help. Yeah. So it's like he also protects the rim because of his length, but then McDaniels also forces you middle or forces you baseline, and there's still nowhere where to go. You almost have to hit 50% from threes to have a chance, and they might even be contested threes. I'm with you on the Timberwolves.
Well, and the Clippers, sorry to cut you up, but the Clippers don't play them until mid-January. That's the first time the Clippers play. I just looked it up because I was like, I don't think they've played them yet. And they haven't, which kind of bums me out because I would like to see, because both these teams are playing so good right now. It'd be a fun game to watch. So we'll see what happens in mid-January, but that'll be a pretty big test for the Clippers. That's man.
The way the Clippers are playing, that could be a battle between two of the best teams in the conference as far as record concerned. I should also mention the Thunder have taken the place of the Grizzlies. And the news that came out today as we're recording, I'm not even talking about the Mitchell stuff, Donovan Mitchell stuff, right? Specifically the Cavs stuff, because that's a whole different conversation that Knicks fans fans are going to have. And it's like they turned down the Donovan Mitchell trade 2 years ago to maybe get him at a discounted rate 2 years later. I'm not ready to even wrap my mind around what that's going to look like. But the Lauri Markkanen to OKC thing fascinates me. You want to talk about a perfect four for that team? It's Lauri Markkanen, and then you put Jay Will and Chet and Lou Dort and SGA, who might be. I was doing my All NBA teams yesterday for Patreon, and Kawhi came up, right? And so let me ask you, what team would you have Kawhi on right now? I know this is
no question. First.
But I know this is hey, give me all your All NBA teams, but he's absolutely first team All NBA for you right now.
Absolutely. He's doing it on both ends. Players like Kawhi, two-way players in general, have such a crazy standard, I think, because if you're really good at offense everyone says, oh, that's great. You're really good at offense. And, guys like Luka aren't the best defenders or anything like that, but that gets excused because he's so good at offense. Kawhi is just as good as Luka Doncic at offense at different things.
Mm-hmm.
He's just as good as Luka Doncic. He is obviously one of the better, if not the top tier of defenders in the NBA, but that almost works against him in these situations like this because he's such a good defender that if he's not guarding someone 100% of the time and holding them to 1 of 9 shooting, that gets a knock. So I think because he's doing on both sides of the ball, you gotta go first team. But I can see kind of the team's record not helping him in that 6-game streak is rough, and they just came out of it because they had to win 6 in a row. So that I can see kind of hurting his case, but I think he's got to be first team.
So,
and I'm biased, obviously. But.
Well, I mean, I would hope you would be. I was trying to figure out a way to get Jalen Brunson onto one. There's just too many. There's too many guys especially with it being positionless. So here's my counter. I don't have Luka on my first team, and that's just a testament to how insane this league has been.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna throw some names at you, and you tell me, are they also first team with Kawhi? So we now have 4 spots, right?
Okay.
So Jokic.
Yeah.
Obviously, yes. Embiid.
Yeah.
Okay. Giannis. Giannis had 64 points in a basketball game 2 days ago.
Kawhi had 41 the other day.
It's not 64.
Yeah, but he didn't take 30 free throws.
That's true. They didn't go to hack a
Yeah, okay, yeah,
Giannis. Okay. So now for one spot,
yeah, right. Now
SGA and LeBron, and then you throw Kawhi in there, and then you throw Luka in there, and then Durant's averaging 30 a game. I think my question is, I think
availability hurts Durant because if that would hurt Kawhi. Because that would hurt Kawhi.
No, that would hurt. That would hurt. And that's Booker probably deserves in this conversation, but he's missed 9 games already. So he can't miss more than 8 games the rest of the year because of the new requirements. Right. So it's almost like stupid. Booker can be in the conversin, but
he
might just be out of it by the time we get to February because he's missed too many games. So.
Yeah, I think Kawhi's ahead of Shea. Shea is very good.
Ahead of Shea. Wow.
Yeah, I would put him up there.
Okay. No, listen, the way this turnaround has gone, I understand it. I also recognize who I'm talking to. And
I'll tell you what, if we were like 5 games under 500 right now, I'd be like, not first team.
Okay.
But the turnaround has been very real, and he's been one of, if not the biggest parts of that turnaround.
So looking at the on-off, the defensive case you're making is probably the case for Kawhi to make first, even second at this point, because they're 11 points worse with him off the floor on defense. So I understand if you're going to that where it's plus, they are holding their own when he's on the court.
Totally, but it's defense. Really good.
Yeah. It helps when you're it helps when you have Paul George with you. Listen, I'm splitting here. He's been outstanding this season. So I'm not even trying to push back too much. This league is so packed with talent.
It's an unbelievable year.
So I did catch something there that you said that the 65 game rule is not something you like. So if you want to expand on that, why don't you like it? Is it too many games, or just should there not be a restriction at all?
There just shouldn't be a restriction. I think the people who vote on these things are rational people and stuff like that. It's not like we're voting on these awards aren't decided strictly by points, minutes per game per 36 and stuff like that. This isn't an anti-analytics rant or anything like that, but that's for the voters to kind of figure out. I think if you trust in the voters, which is also a different conversation to have for these kinds of things, but to me, this because something shit happens, right? What if someone has to leave, because of a family issue, you know what I mean? There's just things where it's I think in some cases, they want people to actually be hurt or whatever for the injury reports and the rest, which I get from a league perspective. You want your stars out there. But you can see some teams not really caring about maybe strategically planning some rest days for marquee matchups and be we're just going to play the next game. We're going to sit out this TNT game, maybe as kind of a slight or something like that. So I just think it's such a weird thing to try and manage. And I think players already hate resting. And I think they also maybe hate the idea of the NBA telling them how much they can rest, if that makes sense.
You think the players hate resting?
Yeah, Kawhi wants to play. He's hurt. Like from my perspective of hearing everything that Kawhi and Paul George have talked about, they want to play. Like these guys don't. There's a game 2 years ago, I think, where Kawhi was held out at half against Memphis, and he, for his standards, was very upset about it because no one knew that was going to happen. It was just a training staff call, but it was just like I think they want to play. You know, I just think. You take a look at some of the schedule. You and I were talking about before we recorded the brutalness of the Knicks' upcoming schedule. I just mentioned the insanity that is the end of the Clippers schedule. There's a lot to look at with how the schedule is created too, with these back-to-backs and things like that. So I don't know what the answer is, but I don't think putting a minimum for awards is it, because I also think that some guys who maybe get the award are going to get a knock because so-and-so couldn't qualify. Right, like it's he was this good, but this guy only played 64 games, but his stats, you know what I mean? It just kind of leaves, I guess, more room to kind of needle awards, which I don't think the NBA needs now.
As a fan of a team who employs Julius Randle, who's made a couple of all NBA teams because he plays every game. I appreciate that there's now a requirement, but I can understand that perspective. And I think where it gets a little murky is when, like last year, going through all NBA teams and making ours, like I had no clue what to do with Kawhi playing in the 40s, and it's really hard with Durant playing in like just over 50 games last year, and Curry playing just over 50 games last year, and I didn't know what the cutoff was. This, at least, it was cleaner. And I think there's also some perspectives going on here where, like, the Clippers have been notorious for the rest days, right? And I'm coming from Thibodeau land, where if it's not broken, you're playing.
Yeah, exactly.
So I wonder if I had come from like a couple years with the Ty Lue and the Clippers training staff running the Knicks, and I'd be like, come on, it's not necessarily detrimental to awards voting. The league did this solely so that way they're trying to negotiate a new television contract,
right? So
I understand that it has nothing to do with player rest or safety or anything like that. But I don't know. The bigger thing I like is the positionless games, because how do you feel about the positionless for all NBA?
I mean, like you said, we just tried to run it down. It makes it really hard, which I guess is the point, because it is all NBA and they want it to really mean something for guys. But I mean, it's harder. I don't know if it's necessarily better. I kind of like the idea. I think my brain just likes the organization of, guards, but also with the way basketball is now, it's very difficult. Like, do you look at percentage of minutes guys played at a certain position for this, or
I think what gets tough is these voters have been pulling some chicanery for a while now. And like last year, we had a voter in New York that voted for Embiid as a forward on first team. And like Bill Simmons notoriously put Luka as a second team forward last year. And like they've been trying to force position guys out of their position anyway. And I think for a while in NBA history, like Rudy Gobert made a bunch of all NBA teams, not being one of the 15 best players in the league, but because you need three centers, it works that way. DeAndre Jordan made first team all NBA once. I know I don't have to tell you that, but was he the fifth best player in the league that year, right? But like, I wonder if you're trying to give all NBA the picture of these are the 15 best players in the league, that it's cleaner. Like, this is a year we had multiple point guards. This is a year we had multiple centers.
Yeah. You can look at the eras. I guess it makes the eras look interesting too, right? Because you're like, this is when we had Jokic and Embiid.
Exactly. all on the first team. Like, it'd be much cleaner that way. I go back to the 90s where, like, I grew up, like, I just missed the Ewing peak, the Patrick Ewing peak.
Yeah.
But like, Ewing was was fourth in MVP, I believe, in 1995. And missed all NBA because first, second, and third team was David Robinson, Akeem Olajuwon, and Shaquille O'Neal. So, like, that's where I go to. Like, it would actually look cleaner to represent a year if it's positionless. But I understand.
I like that argument too. I think I actually maybe like that argument better. Yeah. I can see that. I can see the logic for that clearly. Yeah. I like that idea.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the Clippers are going to have some all NBA candidates, obviously, and the start that James Harden's been off to. Now, did that start his uptick when the change was made with Westbrook, or did it start sooner than that?
100%. It 100% happened when the change was made with Westbrook. This is not a knock on Russell Westbrook. They just they couldn't share the floor with that lineup together. It just couldn't work. And we saw it not work very clearly. He's come in, he's been very respectful of guys' roles and things like that. I don't know if you've looked at his field goal attempts on a per game basis, but they've been ticking up and up with the Clippers, because that was an issue when he first came. He wasn't really a catch and shoot guy, which was a main concern for some Clippers fans. And we've seen him get a little bit better at that. He's not taking the little dribble and trying to shoot. He's actually just going straight up with it, which is helping his overall field goal attempts. And he's just seeing the game so well right now. I think you could put any four guys out there and he would still be able to sling, 10 assists or something like that. But the way that he's manning the ship and being able to play at the same speed Kawhi's comfortable with as a starting 5 unit has been kind of there from the start. He's just getting more comfortable individually within the system, if you will.
Yeah, the pulling up his Basketball Reference game log now, to Knicks fans that don't know, he has not taken more than 15 shots in a game yet with the Clippers, and he's averaging over the last, I believe it's 8 or 9 games. Let me actually pull that back up again. It's over the last 8 games. He's averaging 20 and 8 on 48 from the field and 48 from 3, along with his usual 92% from the free throw line. Yeah, he's been. It seems from my perspective, he's been outstanding. And look, we made the bet when we reacted to it on our Patreon.
Yeah,
that there's a world here where the Clippers are what that Rockets team was when they went like fully small, where like the tallest player was Trevor Ariza. Sure. And it was just on steroids, because now instead of Ariza and PJ Tucker and Eric Gordon, it's Kawhi Leonard, Paul George, and Russell Westbrook. Although PJ Tucker is still there for now.
Yeah. Do you guys want him?
No, can I interest you in one RJ bet? Yeah. I'm kidding, Knicks fans. I'm kidding. Yeah. I don't want to trade RJ for PJ Tucker. But like, is that the play style goal? That I know that specific team didn't win much, but that got off to like a 7-game winning streak in Houston, and then the pandemic happened and it got cut short. Sure. But is that the idea, is that we're just going to be completely positionless, and come playoff time, like we're gonna have as many of these great guards on the floor, great guards and wings on the floor as possible?
I think what's interesting is Clippers fans have been really wanting that. Last year we were promised that. It was Wingstop this. We're going to use Rocco and Batum and all of this stuff. And it quite literally, I don't think ever happened for more than like a 3-game span. But the Clippers starting lineup, which has a true 7-footer in Ivica Zubac, who's had a phenomenal year. His defense has been great. His offense has been a lot more polished as he's gotten comfortable with James Harden in the pick and roll. But the starting lineup's been great. And Zubac, who usually does not close for the Clippers, has been in some closing lineups. And Ty Lue is trusting him to get down there and do the dirty work when it comes to the boards. So right now, I think they're kind of embracing basically what the starters is, which is 2 bigger guards. Then you got, Kawhi and PG are going to be out there no matter what. And then you have a bigger guy down low to help on the boards. That's where they're at right now. When Mason Plumlee comes back, we'll see what happens, because he was in a pretty big role for the Clippers before he got hurt by Julius Randle. But right now, it seems like it's a little more as traditional as you could get right now. And the other lineup that's been really good is Norman Powell, James Harden, Kawhi, PG, and Zubac again. So their 2 best lineups right now do feature Zoo, but in the playoffs, as you know, watching Ty Lue coach, new things can pop up. So I think we might see that if they get a little bit bigger at the trade deadline, if we see a move for maybe just a bigger 4 or someone like that. But I think right now they're sticking with a 7-footer out there. Yeah.
So 2 things. One, I completely forgot about the Julius Randle injury that was caused.
It's insane.
Listen, Randle was in the midst of.
He was going through it.
He was going through it at that point.
That was a couple of games, man.
That start to the season that Randle had. I don't even think you could find like they kept saying it's the worst start in 20 years, and it's like, yeah, but I'm going to guarantee anybody else you're going back to that 30. Had that start, didn't have the attention that their fan base had on them after a disappointing playoff run.
Yeah.
He was like, anything he did right was just like, how dare you, Julius, do something right.
Oh, now you want to do
now
that.
You want to play good defense. But he's thankfully turned it around. And I have the lineup data that you're referring to. So Zubac, Kawhi, Paul George, Man, and Harden are a plus 14 and 400 possessions so far this season. There's this kept happening. I don't know how much cleaning the glass you do, but when cleaning the glass does like minimum 100 possessions for their leaderboards, and for the longest time, the number one lineup on cleaning the glass was Russell Westbrook, Paul George, Kawhi Leonard, Robert Covington, and Ivica Zubac, because in 107 possessions, it was plus 39.
Yeah.
And I never knew how to like get rid of that, because like, we're never going to see that again. But to your point, the next couple lineups, when you include Norm Powell, there's a Daniel Tice lineup that's really good. So they seem like they're rolling at the moment. And look, obviously with the Knicks, as we transition into this game and how these teams could potentially match up, not just tonight, but in the future, if there's a transaction conversation, the Knicks have been holding their chips for a potential move. The Mitchell stuff will get talked about a lot this weekend, I know.
Yeah.
But like this year, we went into it being like, okay, well, let's see if the Sixers spontaneously combust. Oh, they're fine. Oh, let's see if the Clippers spontaneously. Oh, wait, they're fine. And I mean, I'll just flat out ask you, like, does the fact that this seems to be working, and the fact that from what I listen to your podcast, it seems like this is a year one of many from this core that they've put together. Is there any thought that like there's a certain place they have to get to in the playoffs to avoid any type of blow it up, or like they're going into a new building, make the second or third round, and they're all going to extend, and it's not a worry whatsoever?
That's the crazy thing, is that everyone is up for a contract extension, including Ty Lue. He does not have a contract extension right now. You have that coinciding with championship legacies of James Harden, Paul George, and Russell Westbrook. Like, everything is, the pressure could not be higher on kind of either party right here between team and players. Like you just said, the new stadium's opening up. You don't want to go into that with a letdown the season before. So I think, again, pending the H word, knock on wood, all that stuff, this has to be a Western Conference Finals team.
What's the H word? Hold on, I'm blanking. What's the H word?
Health.
Okay. A's my H word. I was thinking availability.
Oh, availability. Sure. Yeah. Whatever you want to use.
Health is a good word too. Yeah. I don't know why that didn't click for me.
You're like,
I could have heard the I word too. It was like injuries. Wait. Oh, health. Okay. Apologies.
But that for it's Western Conference Finals. Then with good process. You know what I mean? Like, obviously, if some insane thing happens, but I think it's got to be Western Conference Finals. Once you get to the Western Conference Finals, things are so tense and it's such a tight race, assuming at that point that I think you can make an argument, even if things don't go well, that, we really saw something there. But it's another year on guys' legs. Like, they have some big decisions to make. I had a tweet, and I think I still stand by it, that I want James Harden to play so well and the Clippers to succeed with him that he gets a ridiculous offer from someone else and goes and takes the money. That would be wonderful. I would love him to stay with the Clippers, but if he plays so well and that coincides with the Clippers getting a championship, and then some team throws him a lot of money for his age, I'll take it 10 out of 10 times.
Well, that's the perfect scenario. That you get the last
ideal.
Squeeze out of the Harden prime fruit, and then you're good.
Which it might be shaping up to be. It's not like, I don't know. We're only 20-ish games in, but these last 6 have been encouraging. I'm interested to see what happens against the Knicks. I was looking at your guys' rebounding numbers and very impressed by them, and then I also looked at the injury report and was like, right.
Yeah.
Right. That's brutal. Yeah.
Yeah. It's a tough part because like I'm watching not Zubac, Nurkic get 22 rebounds the other night against the Nets. And it's like, Mitchell Robinson's no longer in my life to counter that anymore. And it sucks because he was having an all defense season when he got hurt. And as we mentioned, you're going to have to play 65 games that he's no longer to be able to qualify for. But, their life after Mitch has been a bit of an adjustment where they're just they're just not stopping anybody. The 3-point defense has taken a hit. The rim defense has taken a hit. Now, granted, they got rewarded for making the in-season tournament by getting to play Milwaukee on the road and then Boston on the road. Yeah. And so that kind of sets things back a little bit. But even these next two games since that, where on Monday they gave up 130 to the Raptors, and then this Jazz game that just happened where, I mean, for 3 quarters, it was like, oh, so they're going to hit every 3-pointer, and like 2 or 3 people played well.
Yeah.
You know, so did
Walker Kessler have a good game against y'all?
The second half he did, and it was in a way that good. Was like, you know, it was the Mitch effect, but more of a rim protection standpoint, not an offensive rebounding standpoint. But that's the biggest thing is the Knicks, even when they didn't shoot well, were like, well, we're going to get every offensive rebound. It's fine.
Yeah.
And that's just gone. Like it's just completely gone. And I don't like Tibbs has his work cut out for him to try and make that happen again or find a different way to get advantages. But if they're not hitting threes and they're not winning the possession battle, I'm really curious how they're going to compete in either of these 2 games against the Suns and then the Clippers. Do you have any other thoughts on the Knicks?
I'm interested. Yeah, the point of attack defense is going to be huge for the Clippers. We were just talking about Brunson. He's awesome. Like I love his game. His game is one that could punish the Clippers. If the defense just isn't gelling. That Nuggets game where it took 6 wins in a row to get that taste out of our mouth, that loss, the defense was just not communicating. They were getting beat backdoor. It was one of Kawhi and PG's worst defensive games of the year. But I think something like that would have to happen. And Norm Powell's been on a heater. So if he's able to kind of keep pace for the bench minutes, I think I feel okay about the Clippers in this one.
Yeah, I'm not going to completely say, because this Knicks fans are watching, that I also feel comfortable about the Clippers, but
it's also, who knows, 7 wins in a row is a lot. Like this would be, it's hard to win that many in a row. There's no disrespect to the Knicks or anything like that. We almost lost to the Blazers the other day.
Well, I mean, the Bucks almost lost to the Blazers too. And look, I'm not going to say the Knicks won't almost lose to the Blazers. Look, I should say, we're recording this on Friday afternoon, so the Knicks-Suns game hasn't happened. I may be preaching all this gloom and doom, and they have this huge win against the Suns that you're all referring to. So I'm going to try and keep it more upbeat and more evergreen as possible. And you know what? We're just coming off this win on Sean Marion night. Of course, we're going to beat the Clippers.
There you go.
On the very next night. Last thing before I let you get out of here, I did this with Adam. But I've been asking every guest the Mount Rushmore of rivals. So basically, calendar comes out, the NBA calendar comes out. There are dates you circle right now. I'm just gonna go ahead and speak for you that the Lakers are on this. So I'm assuming when the Lakers are the team you circle first, that this is when we're playing the other team that shares our building. But the other 3, if you'd like to say, who are the other 3 names that you look to and like, all right, I can't wait until the Clippers play this.
I usually don't circle the Lakers games first, just because it's just kind of it's like built in, like it's up there. It's like 4th, but you're like, we're going to play the Lakers. It also historically, how can I say this as politically as possible? If you were to look at the recent matchup data between the Clippers and the Lakers, it would not suggest
that it's a rivalry,
that it's a huge rivalry. I'm talking purely based on matchup data in the recent history.
For those who don't know, the Clippers went like 5 years without losing to the Lakers. So.
It's like, so it's fun and all that. Like, so it's up there for sure. It's number 4. The Phoenix Suns is on there. The Valley Oop is why, like, the Phoenix Suns is up there. Chris Paul was acting like a lunatic in that series. So that's up there. Then you got, like I said, the Lakers. I want to say the Nuggets, but we've just been so bad against them. I don't know if it's technically a rivalry. It's more like, can we beat these guys? So I would go Kings, because Clippers Kings have been some really good games. The Clippers scored 175 against the Kings and lost.
As a fun League Pass rewatch, by the way. Yeah.
And then, like, in terms of, we got Lakers, Suns, Kings. Who else is on that list? Well, Mavs.
The Mavs. Okay.
Because everyone thinks that Luka plays very well against the Clippers, but his teams lose. So
I
will take that every time.
There are back-to-back playoff series against each other, right?
Yeah,
the bubble
and
was
they've
against
lost. Every time. Every time.
Oh wow!
Every series.
It's absolutely the Mavs. I see that. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's probably. And then East Coast teams, the Celtics are one because the Clippers are kind of like kind of mirroring each other, like personnel wise. For a couple of years, it was very similar, like with their two big wings and stuff like that. And then the Knicks, I'll never forget Marcus Morris's audition game for us when he was playing, scored like 30 against us.
We appreciate that very much because it landed us a manual quickly.
Yeah, that is true. But yeah, those are probably the two on the East Coast.
Okay, interesting. I think those are the ones I'd assumed would be it. And when I think about the Rockets would be the only one I think get suggested because of the 2015 series. But I guess. They've been so
bad lately.
They've been it's so tough to call it a rivalry win.
And I was going to say the Grizzlies too, because of the huge rivalries from kind of back in the Lob City days. But that's just been so kind of up and down, I guess. So I think I'm comfortable with my 4.
You mentioned Chris Paul being a lunatic in that Sun series.
He was recently a lunatic the other day against Daniel Tice.
Yeah. Tiger has not changed his stripes much. What's his legacy with Suns fans with Clippers fans?
I was like, oh, well. Probably not very good with Suns fans.
How do Clippers fans remember him? Because we did a thing over the summer where we tried to decide. It was when Dame got traded and Bill Simmons was like, he's not the greatest player ever. And we tried to go through every team.
I think he is.
Yeah. Well, so I do too, but we tried to go through every team and decide who every franchise GOAT was. And like, there's
it's hard for the Clippers.
Well, there's like a case. It is Chris Paul for the Clippers. So I would be curious from your perspective. Does he have any chance of that with you? Or is that of course the conversation, or is it him or McAdoo or someone else?
I think based on pure basketball stuff, what Chris Paul did for the Clippers is that makes it yes for me. That from a basketball perspective, there were times when it was the most frustrating thing you've ever seen in your life. But also, the Clippers don't get to where we are today without Chris Paul and him, doing what he did with the Clippers, which did ultimately end in disappointment and frustration. Mm-hmm. But it's so hard, man, because he's just played for teams that play the Clippers all the time. And he does his Chris Paul bullshit that you love when it's on your team, or I guess you don't love. You rationalize when it's on your team, then it's against you and you say, wow, this is terrible and not fun at all. And he's not the nicest guy. He's not a guy like a lot of players have quotes about him not being very friendly and things like that. So I think Blake Griffin gets held to a higher standard, or not higher standard, just higher regard. He was great. Injuries, obviously, but same with Chris Paul. But Blake is very likable. Blake is a very likable guy. So yeah, it's tough, man. It's one of the more complicated legacies.
Sounds extremely complicated, and I'm trying to pull it up.
And now he's on the Warriors, so it's like,
well, yeah. The Warrior. What's funny is I remember staying up late, like for me on the East Coast.
Oh no, of course, yeah.
Watching those Warriors, Clippers games, and how seriously Chris used to take them and how personally he used to take them. And Steph was just on the ascend. And I mean, I don't even have to tell you what that was like. Yeah, what was that like experiencing the Chris Paul Steph Curry rivalry, but like almost so much
from our side,
from your side,
not fun for the most part. But it was a changing of, Chris Paul obviously still had phenomenal years after that, but it was a change in seeing kind of the collision of what the new version of a point guard could be and what what volume shooting was really going to do for the future of the game. And Chris Paul could still get the mid-range and all those things and stuff like that, but it was mostly just frustrating because you didn't know what to do with it. You just watched it kill you over and over and think, I don't know, maybe someone will figure out how to stop it. That's where the shortcomings come into play with Chris Paul when you look at his tenure for the Clippers and things like that. But he gave his all for the most part. But yeah, it's tough. I'm gonna watch Chris Paul highlights after this.
There you go. Yeah. Well, as someone who wanted the Knicks to trade for Chris Paul back then, and then he got traded to the Clippers instead, that was crazy. I can appreciate. Well, like this. The guy over my shoulder, Carmelo Anthony, like after they made that trade, it was like, all right, they have one more move to make, and they had the assets to do it. And then Amari got hurt, and then they signed Tyson Chandler, and then they amnesty Chauncey Billups, and it just never happened. Like Chris Paul apparently at Carmelo Anthony's wedding said, like, we're going to form a big three of our own here in New York. And then it just,
hey man, I know it's the biggest day of your life.
Yeah, but we're going to make this about us. Right. Yeah. And so I've always admired his game from afar, but also recognize the Chris Paul bullshit that you're talking about. So, and I pulled up the win share totals for Clippers history. DeAndre Jordan is right behind Chris Paul.
Right. And that's because of Chris Paul. Yeah.
Right. So it's tough to be like Elton Brand. And so Bob McAdoo was the one, because of how his career started in Buffalo, that I would have said has a case. I think that was the conversation we had. That was
World Be Free is cool. Like if you're like a cool Clippers hipster, you say World Be Free and stuff like that.
Well, it's going to be interesting. Clippers win the title this year. There's a case for Kawhi Leonard, and I think it might be a shut.
Oh yeah, I mean it would be
a shut. What am I saying? Close and shut case.
Open and shut. Yeah.
Open and shut case. There you go.
Kawhi 1, Paul George 2. It would be no question.
Yeah. James Harden 3. There you go.
Maybe not James Harden 3.
Obvious,
I'd go with Ivica Zubac's 3 just to piss everyone off.
There you go. Is that a source of contention? I remember one of the posts.
People hate Zoo, dude.
That's like, your for.
Yeah, like there's this thing where like people blame so much stuff on Ivica Zubac, and it's like, look he's not. Like,
it's not relevant. Yeah.
People wanted to trade like for Daniel Gafford, this, and it was like, come on, like what are we doing here? Like he plays every single game. He makes like $11 million a year. He's an above average starting center, and he can dominate when sometimes, things like that.
One game I think he's going to be able to dominate in is this game against the New York Knicks, who are going to be starting their backup center and then their third string center.
Shout out Isaiah Hartenstein. Great. Yeah.
Isaiah Hartenstein. We love him as a backup.
He so good as a backup, dude. The Clippers chose John Wall over Isaiah Hartenstein. And some of us are still sore about that, but yes, thank you for loving Hartenstein. He's great.
We love him here in that role, the backup center role.
The backup center, clearly.
When he gets exposed a bit as a higher minutes center, that it can be frustrating, but we'll see what this matchup looks like on Saturday night. Chuck, thank you so much for joining me to preview this matchup on the Knicks Film School pregame pod. Before you get out of here, plug what you'd like to plug.
Thank you so much for having me. This was always a fun time. You can find me at Twitter at Chuck Mockler. Our show, all Clippers. So if you're a Knicks fan and you want the furthest West Coast team you can get, we are at Clippers Pod on Twitter and at Clippers Podcast on YouTube. It's called Clips and Dip. Listen to us, review us, all that good stuff if you want to impress your New York friends with knowledge about the LA Clippers.
Yes. I love the chemistry that you and Adam and Will have, and I think it's a good show, and I highly recommend it, Knicks fans. Check it out, even if it is just to see if Paul George could potentially become available one day. Doug, thank you so much, my man.
Thanks for having me.